I'm holding two things that are seemingly unrelated, a croissant and an iPhone. The croissant smells warm and simple flour, butter, heat, and time. On the other hand, the iPhone is cold and complex glass, microchips, codes, and signals. But these two objects tell the same story. They are readily accessible to us wherever we are. 1 century ago, one of them was unthinkable, and the other one had just started its story. How economies changed, how we moved from the age of machines and fuel to the age of information and coordination, how ovens turned to optics, how steel gears gave their crown to tiny switches in microchips. This is the story we will be chasing today. Our transition from industrialized croissant to intelligent iPhone, from the industrial age to the knowledge age. And along the way, we will use one clean lens, our 6-step transition stack that we unfolded in the previous video, which shows up whenever a new economy takes over. First, a tool, technology or system becomes reliable and cheap. Second, rules and rights click into place. Third, firms and finance change their form and shape. Fourth, supply chains scale and standardize. Fifth, skills and credentials spread. And sixth, daily life bends around the new normal. Once you learn to see these steps, the future stops being foggy. You can ask better questions. You can spot what step is progressing and what step is stuck. In 1839, a young Austrian officer named Auguste Saint opened Boulangerie Viennoise in Paris. He brought his tricks with him and a croissant roll that French bakers shaped and refined. Parisians fell in love with that new bakery, and other bakeries copied the style, and the croissant began its rise. It was becoming the crown jewel of French bakeries. Actually, it was not just croissants, but what we saw was the rise of industrialized bakery. Like every other everyday stuff started to be industrialized in the late 19th and early 20th century. Let's look at how the 6-step transition stack made this delicacy and hundreds of other bakery products a breakfast routine for millions. Step 1. Reliability and cost. Milling machines improved. The new roller mills made flour fine and consistent. Coal and later gas ovens kept that heat steady. And commercial yeast rose the same way each morning, leaving no room to guesswork. Steam-powered trains on newly developed steel railways brought cheap flour and butter into the city. Costs fell, quality evened out, and as viable use of machines became central practice in the economy, we needed clarity on how to operate this new world. Which is step 2, rules and rights. Cities and states set simple weights, measures, and food rules. You could open a bakery, buy standard flour, and sell it at a posted price. Fewer barriers, clear basics, more opportunities, and this legal certainty increased the appetite for new investments. So the next step is firms and finance. Bakeries got bigger, some even ran night shifts, and flour merchants offered credit so ovens could fire before cash came in. A network of new companies formed. Millers, butter traders, wood or coal dealers, cartmen. That was the firms and the finance step progressing. But to scale even further, we needed better infrastructure. So step 4, supply chain and scale. And we dug more canals, built new railways, just to ensure we brought inputs on time. It was the game of supply chains and scale. Handcarts and early vans delivered at dawn. Paper bags, tin trays, and later telephone simplified the orders. The city became one large melting pot for new specialties, new roles, and new titles, changing the daily tasks we needed to deliver for a thriving economy. So we are entering into step 5. A century ago, boys used to learn as apprentices, but techniques started to spread in printed manuals. And by the late 19th century, baking schools taught temperature, timing, and food hygiene. Every year, they were sending hundreds of newly trained chefs to bakeries. A trained worker could walk into any shop and get to work immediately. And as years passed, every industry had their own specialized workers, and that was shaping the culture, which is step 6. culture, and daily life. School bells and work reshaped mornings. In the following decades, people grabbed coffee and a pastry on the way to offices and trams. Cafes turned the habit into a ritual. The croissant became everyday fuel for the working stiff. A fancy bakery product of the prior century was silently becoming a mass breakfast by the time the knowledge economy was knocking the door, feeding brains to innovate the next economy. Not by magic, by the same 6 steps: cheaper, steadier tools, clear rules, bigger firms, better pipes, skilled people, and daily habits that stick. So, what changed after the croissant became our morning fuel? The center of value moved. What is appreciated in the economy moved. But what is an economy? It is a system by which people and organizations like companies, governments, etc., in a society produce, distribute, and consume goods and services through exchanging values to meet their desires and needs, usually driven by problems, of course. So, what is a value? Simply put, value is a benefit or utility or satisfaction or any combination of them to individuals, organizations, and society. Throughout history, many different methods have been used to exchange value, but in modern times, we exchange government printed money to access the solution we are looking for, and the value is measured by its price. Another important point is that the size of the value is almost always proportional to the perception of the problem being addressed. That is, the bigger the problem perceived, the higher the value or the price of the solution. The concept of value is important because we distinguish economic paradigms based on the value creation dynamics and which dynamics dominate the economic output with the highest value generation. And for the industrial economy, the value was driven by machining. Morning started with machines. Ovens, which are also machines, held a steady flame. Mixers, which are also machines, thumped, and rails and carts brought flour on time. They were also machines. People learned to read gauges, keep schedules, and run machines. Value lived in the things you could touch. Produce more, make them cheap, and move them on time. I call this model Machine Zero. Take matter and energy, add instructions, and push it through reliable machines and infrastructure to collect goods. But another scene was growing louder in the back office as the industrial age matured. Offices filled with paper, phones, and filing cabinets. Orders, prices, timetables, payrolls, lots of data and information were everywhere actually. And the more factories produced, the more information piled up. And industrialists were guessing that the next bottleneck would not be a broken belt, but it would be getting the right facts to the right desk before a track left or a shift started. And the two world wars pushed this lesson hard. Planning whole economies taught governments and firms to move signals with discipline, not just steel and oil with force. After the war, at places like Bell Labs, tiny switches called transistors started a 90-year-long journey of digital computation. Circuits shrank, reliability rose, costs dropped, and information started to move the way Call once had, to everywhere on schedule. By the time chips fit on a fingernail and networks stitched these together, this time value had slipped from machines and steels to code, design, and coordination. That is the knowledge economy. You still need ovens and trucks, but the winning edge comes from knowledge in the loop. Who knows what, who decides when, and how fast you learn, how well you connected. Because everyone produces something, but only the ones who master knowledge win. The baker still sells a croissant, but price, demand, and supply now ride on screens. And the iPhone, on the other hand, is the proof. Most of its worth is invisible. Chips, software, data, and the network that wakes when you tap. Machine Zero was steel and power. Feed matter and energy into hardware, guide it with human skill, and get the physical goods out. But the core model of knowledge economy, the machine one, looked different. This time, you feed inputs like data, rules, and goals into computer. Your machine is computer. And the output is action and decisions like prices, routes, schedules, designs, payments, recommendations, messages. Once you figure out and write the logic, it runs the same way at midnight as it does in the afternoon. It scales by copying code and adding service way faster than digging canals or laying railways. Think about our bakery. In machine 0, the night shift needed dough and watch the oven. But in machine 1, one program forecasts tomorrow's demand, another program helps you order butter and flour weeks ahead. Apps used in the supply chain assign routes to driver to deliver on time, and a couple of software programs process payments of regulars at 7:30 a.m. No extra flour moved, but the value shifted towards the knowledge, fewer misses, less waste, and faster mornings. The iPhone is a doorway to Machine 1 or any other computing device. Tap Maps and a global system computes the best bet. Tap Pay and the web of ledgers say yes in a blink. And tap Camera and software captures the croissant, not films. And tap Instagram and share your morning picture to the world. You still live in a physical world, but more of what you pay for now begins as logic coded on a chip and coordination over a network. That is the knowledge economy in one picture. We still bake, ship, and build, but the margin moves to who processes information fastest and best. From croissants to iPhone, this story is one road, but we change our vehicle on the road. We began by mastering machines and fuel, and we ended by mastering information and coordination. Now let's briefly zoom in and see exactly how that shift took hold. As we understood the importance of processing bulks of data and information and of coordinating people during the World Wars, our focus started to shift towards a new type of machine. A machine that can store data and information, make complex calculations, and distribute them to wherever we need it. That was the vision, but we had nothing viable at hand in the beginning. That is where the new establishment of industrial economy got stuck and pushed for new solutions and closing the loop of 6-step transition stack. The reliability and cost curves activated once again. Now we are time traveling to a war room during World War II. Imagine the scene. Artillery tables were arriving late. Lives were depending on numbers. Human computers were precise, but the clock was beating them. Engineers and mathematicians were too slow to move the needle. So, engineers wired a room full of hot vacuum tubes and promised speed, the ENIAC, Electronic Numerical Integrator and Computer. It was our first effort towards a computer. It nailed calculations better than human computers, but it was costly. Reliability and cost were the heroes and the villains. But it opened a new door. If machines can turn days into minutes, what else could they coordinate? After a couple of years, peace came, but it didn't remove the idea. It changed the customer. Governments and big firms now wanted speed for census, insurance, logistics, and banking. This time, UNIVAC, Universal Automatic Computer, stepped onto the stage. The same idea, but for business. It even predicted a presidential race correctly before bailouts ended. But the establishment didn't trust this new machine and chose not to broadcast its prediction. I believe it was because culture and daily life were not ready to see a medal oracle working better than Gallup. That hesitation slowed adoption, but sparked a second push. Make the machine so dependable that skepticism feels silly. So once again, a race in reliability and cost curves started. Under the hood, the fragile bone of whole system was the vacuum tubes. They were hot and prone to explode. It was blocking the reliability. And this bottleneck gave birth to the transistors. Smaller and cooler switches. It didn't just shrink the computing box, it made on and off 1 and 0 boring, repeatable, and reliable. When switching became reliable, businesses planned around it. A century ago, James Watt locked his innovation behind patents, but the US made a crucial rules and rights twist for this new technology: the licensing. It spread the know-how rather than locking it in a vault while cherishing its investors with profits from licensing. And immediately, finance showed up with real money to make bigger and better computing machines. With the rules clear, suppliers popped up and standards became a topic to discuss and agree. Courses appeared in universities, and this young industry started to look like a real industry. And in a decade, all steps were filled with smart actions because the return was great. The one who controls the information controls everything. With money rushing into the invention race, in a couple of years, an idea began to shape the infrastructure. Putting many transistors on one slice. That was the birth of integrated circuits, or today we call them microchips. They were not yet silicon-based back at that time, but early buyers like the space and defense industry were willing to pay for this expensive infrastructure, and that kept factories learning until yields went up and costs went down, with silicon chips helping supply chains and scale step to be optimized. Standard parts, standard testing, cleaner rooms, reliability was on the rise again. Universities renamed old math rooms with computer science. A mathematician who once ran calculations by hand in a war room now learned to write a loop that can be coded in these new machines. Skills and credentials step was filled with genius people. Calculation power of these microchips doubled every 2 years and become more compact year after year, and capable computers flooded labs and offices. Inside firms, clipboards turned into spreadsheets. Cost tracking became an engine of growth. Firms and finance step was filling faster than it was in the industrial era. That quiet management flip, that is treating information as a flow you can measure, let a company move like a well-run bakery at down. This was the rise of management discipline. 2 centuries ago, a young man named James Watt had opened the road for modern engineering and made discipline an indispensable part of the industrial economy. Now, another young man, Peter Drucker, who was expelled from Germany, was writing the fundamentals of management discipline. And in 2 decades, management science became one of the backbones of the knowledge economy. We moved from smart foremen to smart managers who measures every flow in an organization. Reliability and cost improved because managers treated information as a product. Standards, feedback loops, and incentives became the new tools of this economy. And of course, firms and finance noticed this opportunity and funded the improvements. When the calendar hit 1969, another opportunity was showing itself up. An opportunity arose to connect offices and knowledge over the internet. First, a team sent the first packets over ARPANET. The plan was to send login. The system crashed after the first 2 letters. It read LO. But in 1973, Xerox PARC got Ethernet running inside its office. While management learned to measure, the first networks began to stitch rooms together. Computers began to talk to each other across rooms. And in 1983, the internet switched to TCP/IP. Machines that never met could speak the same protocol now, and a handful of machines started whispering across cables. That wasn't just wires, it was rules and rights, shared technical recipes that let strangers plug in. With every successful handshake among computers, reliability ticked up, and culture inched forward. Sending a message became less like a magic, more like mails. Warehouses also learned to talk as well. In 1974, a worker in an Ohio grocery store scanned a strip label on a pack of gum and it dropped from stock. That was the barcodes. It started spreading from checkout lanes to pallets. Electronic data interchange linked orders and invoices. But new tools always hit old rules and they face the establishment. We know that because we have talked about them in the previous video. And in the knowledge economy's case, it was phones and data. Phones had been a regulated monopoly for decades in the United States. This gray sat on your desk, connected to one company and one price list. Data wanted to flow, early internet was there, but pipes were narrow and controlled by one company. And in 1984, the AT&T breakup split the system into regional carriers and a long-distance company. It was messy at first, rate cards confused everyone, but competition increased. Modems whistled, services multiplied, prices dropped, and other countries moved at their own pace, yet the same pattern repeated. More players, more investment, more bids, rules and rights were updating again. And when we solved this connection problem, we were ready to accelerate the idea of globalization and let the knowledge economy scale the industrial economy. This sentence is important. 2 centuries ago, the industrial economy scaled mercantile economy, and now it's the knowledge economy's time to scale the industrial economy. And a steel box with standard corners, a barcode with standard stripes, and purchase orders in a standard dialect turned ports and warehouses into a choreography. Supply chains and scale stepped forward. Rules and rights kept the beat, and knowledge made trade legible, so physical goods could move like copy-pastes in a spreadsheet. Meanwhile, microchips kept shrinking and getting smarter. A spreadsheet replaced a ledger, a graphics interface replaced a manual. Skills and credentials raced to keep up. Night classes, new degrees, a million how-tos. Culture followed. Homes made room for a beige box. Kids learned to tinker. Firms and finance rewired to this new economy as well. Small teams could now try 10 ideas because the 11th might pay for them all. And all of that invited a more complex, more finely tuned global supply chain. Companies separated design from fabrication, fabrication from assembly, assembly from distribution. Just in time reduced warehouses to a few hours of air. Costs fell because the system learned to predict and coordinate, not just to produce. With globalization, IP licensing, and precision engineering, microchips kept getting even better. Now, mobile phones took off. Some companies designed brainy cores and licensed them. Foundries printed them at scale. Carriers financed access. And app builders filled the gaps. Firms and finance changed its shape around those contracts. Supply chains learned a new cadence and skills broadened from soldering to software. Then the phone swallowed the computer and became a pocket server. Radios and browsers got good enough that the network followed you down on the street. Culture bent again. Maps replaced asking, taps replaced cash, messages replaced "Are you home?" calls. The rules of the market move into your palm. Platform policies, app store contracts, privacy guardrails, so that a million tiny publishers could ship their apps safely. And reliability felt invisible because it was everywhere. But speed amplifies small mistakes. A bad deployment can darken a continent. A rumor can move prices faster than a plane. This global smoothness makes local shocks travel and cascade into bigger crises. And the new bottleneck isn't the wire, it is the attention. Because everything has become too complex for a human mind to comprehend. Too many pings, too little mornings. That's where we stand. Every step in the transition stack is full, and the rhythm, once again, is calling for the next progress. That's where we are heading next, the birth of AI, and how these 6 steps are shaken to work once again. Now hold the iPhone to the light. It's not one invention. It is the moment when every step is full at once. Switches you never see switching. A radio that finds a signal in a noisy sea. A screen that obeys your fingertip. Shared protocols, the very language of technology that let everything talk. IP frameworks that let hundreds of firms cooperate and still invest. And an app store contract that sets terms for a million tiny publishers. Specialists from all over the world like microchip architects, foundries, OS teams, camera labs, carrier partners coordinated by platforms, contracts and dashboards. Factories cleaner than hospitals. Containers arriving like a clockwork. Last mile networks that drop your order on your doorstep in less than 24 hours. Millions who can design, verify and operate. Millions more who can build on top. It's a pocket ritual. Tap to meet, tap to navigate, tap to bakery, tap to pay. A photo of your croissant wakes servers, ledgers and maps around the world. You are standing on the far side of this loop that began with a room of hot tubes racing a war. The pastry is still flour and butter. Everything around it changed. Its timing, trust and coordination. Invented and learned, standardized, financed, shipped, taught, and finally woven into the way we live. And because this is a real story, not a fairy tale, we should see the costs. Inequality widened everywhere. Social ladders didn't move. Since efficiency and fragility travel together, a hiccup slows down the economy. Shifting from creator mindset to consumer mindset poisoned the rivers, land, ocean. The very earth that nourished our civilization is now dying. And all of these problems are compounding while we are heading towards the next turn of the stack. But that is not the end of story. They are the new bottlenecks, calling for the next reliable tools, the next fair rules, the next set of shared habits. The challenge is immense, I agree, but the pattern is clear. The next journey, the one we are all starting today, will be about mastering our impact. And just like before, it will be shaped not by magic, but by the choices we make at every single step. I want to quote the founder of management science, Peter Drucker. A time of turbulence is a dangerous time, but its greatest danger is a temptation to deny reality. And the greatest and most dangerous turbulence today results from the collision between the delusions of the decision makers and the realities. Hey everyone, Subutai here. If you found this story of the croissant and the iPhone insightful, it's because a huge amount of research and passion goes into every single video I say on this channel. I absolutely love untangling these complex ideas and sharing them with you. But to be honest, this is a one-person show, and the only way I can continue dedicating the time needed to create content like this is with your direct support. So, if you get value from these videos and want to see more, please consider joining my community on Patreon. And there are simple, free ways to help me. Liking, subscribing, and sharing the video helps more than you know. I also read every single comment, so please leave your thoughts below. It's a fantastic way to join the conversation. Each of these actions tell the algorithm that this kind of thoughtful content is worth spreading. So thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.